Hey everyone, welcome to the first podcast of Made You a Mixtape. My name's Jason. I'm your host for the podcast. Let me explain a little bit about what this podcast is about. So, what we're going to do on every episode is we're going to talk to different people from different walks of life and discuss how music not only has affected their lives from early years to now, but also affects what they do in lots of different environments and lots of different careers. So it's basically music is the language that binds us all, but we all speak it differently. And in today's episode, we are sitting with Alex Chartrand, who is, well, you know what, Alex, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and what it is that you do.
All right. I'm Alex. I go by AC online and in music terms. And I am Jason's nephew-in-law.
Got to keep it in the family on the first one, right?
Woo-hoo! Oh, yeah. And what I do is I mainly do session remixes of different artists, whether it be their hits or their odd songs.
So now, and I've heard some of your remixes. So when you're doing a remix and you're given a song to work with, how do you, what's the starting point for you when it comes to doing a remix?
So a lot of the times for the older songs, if I get the full multi-track session, what I do is I put it through Ableton. I have to mix and master the session right away because I get them dry, I get them unmixed, and from there I then export the session now mixed and mastered, and then I could then I'm able to sort of reconstruct the song either to sound completely different or I make an extended version. A lot of the times with the older songs, there'll be a complete unreleased section of the song, whether it be a verse or demo vocals or something like that, and I'll incorporate that into the mix.
Now, for those who have never been into a recording process or have never watched any documentaries where I know the classic album series was great for this, where they would take an album and kind of break it down track by track and even piece by piece. How much goes into like your average ordinary song when it comes to the recording process?
Depending on the song, a lot of the stuff by like the Beatles, it's a lot of times like a 4-track recording, so it's nothing too intense. It's quite simple. But when you get stuff by like Michael Jackson, for example, you get like between anywhere from 30 to 100 tracks in a session, and a lot of those it's layered vocals, whether it be for harmonies, different takes, if there's an orchestra involved or a horn section. So it's depending on the song, it could be really, really hard to mix, as well as the equipment that they used originally to record it. A lot of the Motown stuff is very hard to mix and master because of the equipment that they use compared to a more expensive studio like Universal Studios and Sony and stuff.
So when you're going through all the different tracks and all the different parts of the song, how do you decide what stays, what goes, and what gets changed?
So a lot of the times you listen to a session completely and then hear what the differences are between the release version, whether it be the release when it's shorter than the actual session, because you have a lot of conversation in the beginning, because it's essentially the reels that are digitized. So you'll have a lot of the conversations with the band or with the singer and whoever's working on the board, and you'll have, like I mentioned, some parts that are completely different or unreleased. For example, on Michael Jackson's song "Off the Wall," they took out an entire flute section. They took out a group vocals that were just a bunch of random people together. They had taken out a whole percussion section, and the song was shortened because I think the session length was almost 10 minutes long, and on the album the song's like 3 minutes. And a lot of stuff like that is just a longer breakdown or a different ending or an extra verse. So
because a lot of these songs, obviously, for a first band or for a first artist, they probably have their entire album written before they get into the studio. But as the career goes on, a lot of these, these bands or these artists are writing the songs in the studio. So, I mean, how often do you hear stuff where you it's in there and you go, why was this never in the mix? Or I completely understand why this wasn't in the mix.
a great example for that is the Bee Gees, "Staying Alive." So it turns out the song was made using a loop from the song "Night Fever" because their drummer was sick and had to fly out of Miami. So they looped the drum session or the drum from "Night Fever," and then they recorded all the instruments, including not necessarily unreleased, but like there was this horn section that was on a 12-inch promo for the song that they took out completely, as well as a bunch of other harmonies and vocals and stuff like that. But with the Bee Gees, they go into the studio and they write the lyrics after they wrote the music, which to me was just crazy because a lot of times people go in with a lyric and then they build around the lyric. But these guys, they made the whole song completely finished, and then they wrote the lyrics, and then they recorded the vocals.
That was my next question. Is when it comes to writing a song, I guess what comes first, the lyric or the riff?
I'm going to use me for example. In high school, I was in a program based off the movie School of Rock, and that's what it was called, School of Rock. It was a focus program for our high schools in our district. And essentially what they do is they take a bunch of students from different schools of the same district and they put them together, and whether they play an instrument or they're good at mixing or working on a board or they sing or they can write but they're not really good singers or stuff like that, we all work together and you make an album of minimum 10 tracks. You go to a recording studio, you record, and then you go on tour throughout the schools and you sell your CD. And with that is, we were 13 students making 13 songs. And a lot of the times, if they couldn't figure out the words, the music flow was like magic. But I know for me and this other guy I worked with, Seb, we came up with the words before the music. And then we got robbed and all of our instruments, all of our equipment was gone. So then we had to start from scratch, everything. We lost everything. And then I ended up taking a song that I had worked with another guy that lives in Chicago and took that song and then wrote lyrics to that one. So it's kind of depends on what the feel of the room is, honestly, or how the chemistry is between band members. And I think that plays a big part.
How cool was that program? Like when you're describing it and you sit there and go, yeah, I basically went to School of Rock minus the Jack Black. How formative was a program was that?
It was the most insane time of my life because just in our, because I went to a French Catholic school, and music and arts is not very it's not very well taken. Like, they acknowledge it, but their focus is more on other classes or sports. So when I find out that there's a program that will let me go with other kids and other students that love what I love, and then you get to make an album and then you get to go on tour, it basically that feel of that lifestyle, because a lot of these people even though we all live at different parts of the province, or they live in a different province, music still they always find a way to connect with each other with the music. For example, I have the CD right here, and we went to what's the name of that place? Right by Blair here in Ottawa. There's these big satellite dishes,
Uh,
and it says no trespassing, but we trespassed. We went anyways and took our picture there, and yeah, no, we like it was great. Like you go there, and they basically tell you, listen, sure, you have some classes, but you get to write your music, you get to record your music, demo it out. And they gave us like unlimited access. Like we had Pro Tools, which it's not cheap.
no.
And yeah, we had the full Pro Tools. We had access to everything. And like I mentioned, even though we got robbed, we managed to rise from that that complete crapshoot. Like it was horrible. But I think the album ended up a lot better because of that experience.
Now was this
But yeah, it
program
was great. Got to go on tour, and
now was this program actually part of the school, or was it completely separate from your regular school?
it was completely separate.
Because I mean, you see a lot of especially now with education cutbacks, a lot of music programs get cut from public school, from high school. And I mean, I know
Yeah,
personally, when I was in high school, I leaned right into I was in the string music program when I was in high school, so I was playing like full orchestra, and it was, for someone who may not have been the best high school student, that was at least something for me to be able to latch on to. How important is having those music programs in school?
it's harder for me to put an opinion on that now because I haven't been in high schools for years. I've graduated, but I'm going to sound old here, but the older generation can appreciate the arts program, the music program a lot better than today's generation, because a lot of the times people just, there's a lack of focus and a lack of I don't want to say passion, but there's not that spark that it used to be. Um, Nowadays, it's mostly wind instruments that are really pushed out there in school programs, and it's not until late stages of high school where you get to mess around with a guitar or drum and bass. But by then, it's like a lot of these people, they lose interest. So, but for me, it was really important.
All right, so let's get back to you. To get into a program like your School of Rock program, obviously you had to have an appreciation of music at an early age. When was the first time you really noticed that it was a major part of your life?
Well, um, I always knew I connected to music, whether it be songs on the radio or songs that were playing on TV. But my uncle, um, I think, owns the biggest record collection I've ever seen, like ever. And just the fact that he had like basically like a library of everything from country to polka, like it was, that right there just instantly connected with me. It's like, wow, I this right here brings me the most joy out of anything. Like I never liked sports, I never liked cars or anything like that. It's just that right there. You talk about music, I can talk about it all day long.
Do you remember? Well, let's see. Do you remember the first album you bought with your own money? Not as a birthday gift, not as a Christmas gift, but the first album you went out and purposely bought with money that you had saved or earned.
Okay, so it's kind of like a like It happened twice because the very, very first album I ever bought was this crappy little Walmart cover band of like the pop hits of 1995. And that album got played so much that it wouldn't play anymore. But then I ended up replacing that one with Thriller. I ended up buying that one with my own money, and it was like the special edition of it, like that time. It was great, and it was like, and I still have it. It doesn't play anymore, but I kept it. That one I got to keep.
Okay, so I have to ask that this Walmart Best of 95, what the heck was on that?
You had Hot, 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 the Macarena.
Oh God.
I was obsessed with the Macarena when I was a kid. I had like every version from the Sesame Street to, I don't remember what other TV show covered it, but what else did it have? I can't even remember the rest because I always played the Hot, Hot, Hot and Macarena back to back like crazy.
but I mean, because it was like a covers band, did you feel it lost a little something from the when you watch much music and there's Hot, Hot, Hot there, and then you hear the Walmart cover band version? Was it good enough, or was it
no? What happened was I for the longest time I thought that was the original one. I didn't know it was a Walmart cover one till about 2000 when my mom chucked the CD because it was completely scratched, didn't play anymore, and she's like, "Why do you want to listen to this? It's not even the real singers." And then back then Napster happened, and she showed me all of that, and I was like,
"This sounds so much better." Yeah. Okay, so I know you got a love for vinyl.
Oh yeah,
right, absolutely. So, but when it comes to listening to it, vinyl, CD, cassette, or digital, what's your go-to?
Okay, I had this conversation with somebody the other day too. So, if I'm going to use proper, affordable equipment, the best one to me would have to be cassette, because I listen to a lot of older stuff and they were originally recorded onto a tape reel. So for me, I think the sound quality is better there. However, I do appreciate the quality of vinyl, but not as much as other people would, but they also have more expensive equipment to appreciate that quality. But then it would be more digital as you go, especially with the newer stuff like today's music and like Ariana Grande and stuff like that. You'd listen to that, it definitely sounds better digital than it does on today's vinyl.
See, having listened to vinyl, and I know a lot of people, talk about the warmer tone or just something soothing about that crackle when you put the needle down. But it's funny you mentioned cassette, because it was until CDs came out, it was definitely the most compact of the time, and there was still something to be said about having to go all the way through to the one side, then having to go all the way back to the other, or simply rewinding the cassette with a pen because your Walkman didn't have enough battery power.
I've done that.
Is cassette unfairly maligned? Because you have the people who go with the analogs, like, oh, it has to be on vinyl for it to sound good, and then you have the people who want it to be like pristine digital. Does cassette get the bum rush on this one?
Absolutely. I feel like you haven't lived until you've experienced having to rewind a cassette with a pen or a pencil, But also what I love the most about cassettes is a lot of the times there isn't a problem with cassette. You just have to change that little sponge if it's overused. But with vinyl and CD, if you scratch that, you might as well just go buy another copy.
Until, of course, your stereo player munches the tape, and you've got to sit there and feed it out and whatnot. And
that happened to me with an 8-track, actually.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
Or someone has taken a little piece of paper and put it in the top of the cassette so they can record over top of it. I see you, that. Right? Oh God. And when you sit there and think, someone paid $10 for this cassette, I'm gonna copy it over.
I did that to my mom actually. She had this Garth Brooks tape, and I recorded over. So she's listening to a song, like, oh yeah, and then all of a sudden you hear, "Hi mom, I want to play you my other songs."
And she let you live.
Yeah. Well.
Oh man. And there was something, just very, you know, I don't know whether it was raw or something like that, but it was just like the cassette was always there. It was the first thing that was there with you, right?
Yeah.
You couldn't bring an 8-track player with you. You definitely weren't bringing
No.
a record player with you, But
Mm-mm.
to be able to just like have that cassette with you, whether you were in the halls of school or just on the bus or on the way to wherever you were going, there was something about the cassette being there for you. Until, of course, the battery started to die and the song started to sound a lot slower and a lot lower pitched.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Did you ever make a mixtape for anybody though?
Um, I made a mix CD for a girl. What grade was that in? I think I was in the 6th grade. She was my neighbor, and she's like, "I want you to come to my birthday, but obviously, you're a kid and you want to get this person a gift. You don't know what to give them, but you know the songs that they like, especially if you were as good as friends as we were." So I put all those on a CD. That was that. I made mixtapes for myself in the sense of I would always talk between the songs. And as a kid, I never noticed how much detail I would put into stuff like that until I would listen back to it. And it's like, that's the artist name, that's the name of the song, what album it's from, what year it's from, and then it would play. And it'd be the worst quality ever because I'd have a microphone shoved into a speaker and it was cranked to the max because I'm deaf.
And the funny thing is, like, I don't know, maybe it's just me. Like when, before Spotify, before Napster, before it was very much, songs on demand, you had to wait for that full album and you learned to appreciate the full album. Do you think the concept, or at least the love of the album, is lost now for the love of the song?
Absolutely. I'm going to use this as a good example. So recently I started going through my collection and I bought a lot of the records, mainly for the one song or the two song that I knew, right? And I said to myself, I have all these albums. Why don't I listen to them? Like from start to finish, don't skip any, and just to get that feel of what that person was trying to go through. And the Bloodhound Gang came out with this album called Hooray for Boobies. And I
know it well.
I didn't think I was going to like it because I knew the Bad Touch. And I'm like, that's my song. That's why I got the album. But then I played it and I was like, this is a whole new world for me. And I ended up not only appreciate the band more, but I appreciated the album to its fullest. I have it on everything now, and it's just amazing.
Do you think, because there are some bands that are now, rather than putting it a full album, I know Stitched Apart is one of those bands where rather than put out a full album all at once, like here's your 11 songs, here's your 12 songs, and go, and then we hit the touring cycle. What they've been doing is they've been doing like a song a month and building on. They're still listed as under that specific album, but it's a song a month instead of like the full 12 songs at once. Do you think that's going to be the way it goes, or is the album always going to stay?
I think eventually, if we keep going into this digital era of Spotify and SoundCloud and stuff like that, I think what's going to happen is the album eventually is going to die out, because nowadays with streaming and how artists make money that way, it's almost better to put out a song and let it rock and climb in views and plays. That's how they're going to make their money, versus if you were to go out right now to a store and buy their album. And it's really sad because I saw an article the other day, basically an artist makes like 0.0075 per play versus the $12.99 or the $10.99 or whatever that you're going to pay to get their album, So they could have 1 million plays, but that will just equal up to like $1,000 or $10,000, and then they got a tour to make their money.
And the problem now, of course, being in the middle of this, the pandemic, is that they can't tour.
No,
So,
but I recently got into digital concerts. So Dua Lipa, the Gorillas, they did this. They did a whole concert, and you paid not that much to go see and have this full experience, this live experience. I think the Gorillas was like $20, and you got to see this amazing show for their new album, and they did old songs, but it felt like you were there, but it was on your computer screen or your phone screen, which I think is where we're heading to if this pandemic keeps going where it's going.
it's possible because I know it's funny you mention that. I know Hollywood Undead has done one of those recently.
Yeah.
One of my favorite bands, the Nixons, is doing one coming up. And I mean, it's interesting because when you think about how much money it must take for a band to go on the road and basically be at the whim of, are people going to show up or can they show up, as opposed to, we're going to do this production, we're going to film it once, and then everyone can around the world can watch for $20. And that way it takes out the fans' travel costs. Because I mean, I'm sure you've traveled to different cities just to go see a show.
Yeah, I've been to Toronto. Well, I've been to Toronto a few times, whether it was to go see, like the first time I went to Toronto, I went to go see Kevin Hart. And then I went to go see Shinedown. And I can't remember the other one. But, we went down to Toronto. We went to go see this concert. There's pros and cons to stuff like that because it's such an adventure and such an adrenaline rush to be in that crowd, experiencing that music go through you with all these big speakers. And when we went to go see Shinedown, we were right beside the band because they were right there at the gate. You can't beat that. But the digital concerts is a very close second.
At least it's something that they can do during all of this. There's an avenue for them to be able to continue that. What do you think live music is going to be like when vaccines are in the arm, when the pandemic is over? How are those first concerts going to feel?
Oof. I think they're going to be very precautious as to how many people could go in, even especially in the beginning. But I think once, those first few concerts start to roll out and things get on a good track, I think they're going to be bigger and better than ever, especially for the people who can still do it. I think that it's going to be the best show ever. And I think a lot of people are going to be even more happy about it because now we're all stuck inside, and now they're going to be able to go out there and be with people who enjoy that same music, and all that connection and chemistry is going to just explode. It's going to be amazing.
I think there'll be an adjustment period, though. I think people are going to have that. I don't want a people apprehension about being, on the floor in the pit. So it will be interesting to see, but I'm hoping it comes back. I'm hoping, because there's nothing. It's true. There's nothing like a live show. There really isn't. Okay, so let's get to your musical taste here. So I know that you're a big Michael Jackson fan, a big Elton John fan.
Oh yes.
And we talked about the lost art of the full album, those deep cuts. What would you say is your favorite deep cut from both Michael Jackson and Elton John?
Ooh.
Like, never releases a single. You got to have the album to hear it.
For Michael Jackson, I want to say probably between Thriller and Bad is one of those albums that you need to have the full album, because just every song on those albums is just a banger, one right after another, For Elton John, it's hard for me to say because I'm still discovering his music. Like, I know a lot of his stuff from like the late 70s up to now, but I'm also rediscovering his earlier stuff. But Goodbye Yellow Brick Road is a beautiful album. It's a double album. It's one of the first double albums ever, actually. And the presentation is amazing. It's a very theatrical album. And it's one of those things that you put the needle down or you play it on whatever device and you close your eyes and you can literally see everything that's being spoken or played. And I don't think a lot of things beat that.
If you had a chance to remix a song for one of your favorite artists, what would it be and why?
Okay. I would really love the session for I'm Still Standing by Elton John, because that right there is the song that led me to start liking his music. It was actually on the first record I ever bought. And that too, it doesn't play anymore. It's completely warped. It's played out. But I think that song is amazing. It's upbeat and it's just crazy because I see clips of his show before the pandemic hit, and people from all ages are completely rocking to this song. And like, you just can't be still and listen to this. It's so up tempo and just it's an amazing song. It's hypnotizing. That song I would love to get the chance to, even if I didn't get to see Elton John, I would love that session just to mess around with and just do whatever I need to with it.
Have you ever come across a song where you're working on a remix, or you're just you sit there and go, this is great, but it'd be better as this kind of genre? Like, have you ever gone down that whole, let's take a song and completely throw it out of genre with the remix?
Actually, yeah. There was this song I did, I think it was almost 10 years ago, one of the first songs I ever worked on. And can't remember the name of it right now, but it was so slow. And then we ended up sampling it, and we turned into like this French house upbeat techno song. Like, it was completely insane. And that was like back in the day when like music would just fall out of my head all the time. Now for me, it's so hard to come up with something so creative. But I think it was like this old Diana Ross song, and it was super slow. And we ended up like, me and this other guy, we ended up doing like a huge like house album. And that was like the one that went completely right. Like, people did not expect it at all.
Is there a remix artist out there that you either idolize or got you into remixing, or that you sit there and say, this person's remixes are the best? Aside from yourself, of course.
Okay, so recently, I have an answer for all three types. So someone who I idolize, not necessarily as a remixer, but just the way that they remix makes me so interested in what else they're able to do, is Skrillex, which is very weird to say, but a lot of his stuff that he remixes turns a song completely different than what it is because of his style of vocal chopping. And he's amazing at coming up with different beats and rhythm patterns and stuff like that. Someone who also does a great job remixing is this new kid that I became friends with. His name is Azura, and he plays so many instruments, but also does a lot of work with MIDI instruments. And he'll change a song completely. He'll make a whole new instrumental, but just leave the vocals, which I can definitely appreciate. And the guy who got me into remixing, I'm still friends with 10, 11 years later. I've never met this guy in person, ever. He lives in Chicago. And the only reason why we became friends in the first place is because we share the same name. So I was like, this is great. We're both named Alex. We both love Daft Punk. We both love Michael Jackson, whatever, let's work together. and we made like 6 albums, and the last one that came out took us 5 years to make.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is there an untouchable song? Is there a song where you sit there and say, this song should not be remixed, it is perfect as is?
Oh,
Now we got you
that's
thinking.
really, yeah, that's really hard because I've heard a lot of different things. You know what? I think anything that it's very genre specific for those untouchable songs. Because yeah, sure, you have one of those like pop hits that are like you listen to it and you're like, wow, I can't think of anything else. One of which would be Britney Spears, "Hit Me Baby One More Time." You listen to that and you're like, I can't get that dun, 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 and then like the rhythm and the bass, slap bass and stuff like you can't change that. You listen to the vocals, you can't help but hear the song as it was. But then when you listen to like rock music, for example, or yeah, like Shinedown, I have a bunch of their sessions, but you hear the vocals and you want to do something different with it, but you can't help but not change anything because the song was made so perfect. So it's really hard to answer that.
Do you find it hard, like when you start to hear a new song, something you've never heard before? Are you able to just sit there and listen to it for the song's sake, or as you're listening to it, are you mentally dissecting it into the different sessions and the different stems?
Oh, I think a lot of times, especially nowadays, I'll listen to a song and depending how tired I am, I could really focus on the different parts of a song. I can't remember what song it was. I was listening to it once. I don't have the session to it, and I heard a cover of it. And oh, it was Bruno Mars's. It's one of the songs off his last album, and I was like, I didn't hear that in the original one. And then I would re-listen to it and try dissect it as I was listening to it, and then I was like, it's actually there. Like that's been like it got buried under everything else. So I think once you notice those little details, you can't help but not hear it afterwards. So
So for someone who's been listening to our conversation here, and they share the same passions as you, they have this same want to get into either remixing or music production, what would you tell them?
um, watch as many videos as you can for affordable equipment. I think that's what really messes with somebody is the equipment that they think they need versus what they actually need, which happens to be a lot less. I know when I first got into music production and stuff like that, I said to myself, I'm gonna need, like all these microphones and cables and these mixer boards and all these pianos and all sorts of monitors and giant speakers. But I mean, it definitely helps if you have the bigger speakers for music production. I think that helps a lot versus earphone usage. But I have, like, for example, a decent set of computer speakers that has a bass amp, which definitely helps with the mixing. Um, I have your standard little um, mixer board that hooks up to your digital audio workstation, and that too definitely. Uh, how would I say this? Depending on the DAW that you use, it definitely helps with it is to how simple it is to understand. Like, for example, people use FL Studios and they say it's a lot easier to use than Ableton Live. But people that use Ableton Live will say FL Studios is super hard to use, or Pro Tools or Cubase or whatever the programming you're using. So I think that too definitely helps with where you're trying to go with your mixes. I know a guy that uses Ableton to mix, and he'll use Pro Tools to master. So
So basically, it boils down to, the equipment, sort of important, the software sort of important, but more the drive in the ear, correct?
yeah, yeah. What I learned late into doing this, it's a lot better to use speakers, but if you use earphones, one thing you got to understand is rest. There's a lot of resting involved because if you work your ears and you keep listening to the same thing over and over again, it's not going to sound any different. If you sleep on it and you wake up and then you go, okay, let's listen to it again, you will hear completely different things. I've seen me do a mix in 2 hours and think to myself, all right, it's done. And then I'll open it the next day and I'm like, wow, it's all treble, no bass.
It's funny you mentioned that. I remember I was in a band many moons ago, and we recorded an album. It was on cassette, and I remember being in the studio, doing the mix, and we're like, "Oh, it sounds great in here! It sounds great in here!" And I can't remember if it was our singer or if it was our producer at the time, and they basically said, "Okay, great. How does it sound in the car?" And we dumped it down a cassette and we hopped into his, and it was a beat up little hatchback. Like, I can't remember, it was like a little Toyota hatchback, and we popped it in there, and the speakers were horrible because we'd blown them out by listening to, Bad Religion and whatever else we were listening to at the time, and Sandbox, and pop it in there and listen to it on crappy speakers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with the idea of, if it sounds good on crappy speakers, then everyone's going to be able to enjoy it. And
Oh, yeah.
when you're listening to it on like good studio monitors, or you get the Beats headphones because you thought you had to get the best headphones, does the good gear take away from the mix, or does it over accentuate the mix?
So, I mean, I guess it depends on how serious you want to get into it. If you're like super, super serious, it's always good to have those crappy little speakers to also use for your mix to just kind of compare to. If it sounds, like you said, if it sounds great on a crappy speaker, it's going to sound great everywhere. But if you're more into it as a hobby, or just to mess around, put it on YouTube, I think a decent pair of proper speakers could go a long way. It doesn't. I don't think it hurts in that sense.
In a lot of different artistic endeavors, painters, editors, musicians, and the like, they all tend to, whether it's consciously or subconsciously, put a bit of their own little signature into everything that they do. Painters putting their initials into the paint, editors liking certain, JJ Abrams with his lens flares, although he's kind of backed away from that. Do you find yourself, or do you find that you have created any kind of signature that goes into your remixes, whether it be consciously or subconsciously?
Um, I think I'm known for using the most unreleased aspects of a song into my mix. It's easy to just make a mix using the release parts because people know the release parts. But for me, I put myself in the shoes of, a listener who's a fan of this artist, and I'm like, would I would want to hear that. I did an unreleased solo mix of the song "Walk This Way," which was the Run DMC version with Aerosmith. But what not a lot of people know is that Steven Tyler recorded the entire song solo with his guitarist, and then later on gave the tapes to Run DMC to put on the turntables and record their own vocals. So that whole solo version is unreleased. So I mixed it down and then I put it on YouTube. And I think I got like 5 or 6 people message me going, "You have to send me the audio, like give me a download link, because this is amazing. I never thought that they did that," which also threw me off because I was like, okay, they did the chorus here and there and some ad libs. I did not know that they recorded the entire song. So it was very interesting.
It's funny you mentioned just solo parts of the song or stuff like that. When Chris Cornell passed away, I remember listening to kind of their tribute on the radio, and they played the isolated vocals of him recording Black Hole Sun, and it was haunting. Like it was.
Oh yeah,
it was.
I got
haunting,
goosebumps just now.
Right? Do you think there's an audience out there for hearing these kind of isolated tracks?
Oh yes. If you look back at 12-inch singles, they would always have an a cappella and instrumental, as well as the radio edit and the full 12-inch mix of a song, usually. And then people like DJs and stuff like that would be able to use it for their mix sets and whatnot. But I think there's a huge market for people to, even if it's not something that they own, but I think there's a huge market for an a cappella or a stripped down version of a song. I don't think you can go wrong with stuff like that.
Okay, we're getting to the end of our podcast here, but something we do on every episode, and we're going to be doing on every episode, just to get more of a feeling for you, is we talked a bit earlier about making a mixtape, and you had mentioned that, well, I know what this person likes, so I'm going to put this on there. If you were to make a mixtape for a complete stranger, and the purpose of the mixtape is to basically tell them all about you, so basically songs that to you define you, what mixtape would you make in order to introduce yourself or to explain yourself to somebody?
Man. Okay, so not to sound cocky or arrogant, I would definitely put the song that I did in my music program in high school. It's very cringy because I've experienced it, but I think that the silliness and the cringiness is perfect to describe me, because I'm basically like the class clown without the class. So I'm a clown. No, I would put that song. I would definitely throw some Michael Jackson on there. I'm not quite sure which song specifically, because I really like all his eras from the 70s up to his passing. I would definitely put some Elton John on there as well. I would throw the people for a loop by putting Madonna and Queen and who sings? Give me a sec here. I would put like Bonnie Tyler. There's this one person here that I can't even pronounce their name. After the Fire. Derek Commissire.
I can't say I've heard of that one. Can't say I've heard of that one.
I would put some Wham on there too. Like, I'm a huge fan of the 70s and 80s and 90s. And a bit of the 2000s. I put like some weird techno stuff like Eiffel 65 and I'm Blue, you know.
Oh, great. Now I'm going to have that song stuck in my head now.
Yeah, well, I'd put stuff like that. I'd put like these weird one-hit wonders. I'm a huge fan of one-hit wonders, like Chumbawamba.
Oh God, yes.
You know that, like, I know that right there is a good definition of a one-hit wonder. I'd put a lot of stuff in like that, because it's stuff that once you start listening to it, you just can't get it out of your head.
Okay, we've come to the end. Let us know where we can find your remixes.
So my remixes are on YouTube, mainly on YouTube. I want to say my YouTube channel properly here. Yes, okay, so it's AC Official Music Page. If you search that on YouTube, it'll bring you to my channel, because there's a lot of channels called AC Official. I also have Twitter, where I post my mixes and stuff, which is also AC Official Music Page.
So we're very official about this.
Oh yeah! As soon as I got the nickname AC, I was like, official. It's official.
There could be no other. We've stamped it. There is no erases. Alex, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast. This is the premiere episode of Made You a Mixtape. Be sure to tune in. Our goal is to put one out every week where we're talking to different people from all different walks of life talking about music. Alex, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.